Okay, today we have our Harbor Freight Predator engine and our go-karting rules. Always look at the rules for your class in the go-karting book. There's lots of rules. This is a box stock Predator engine, and then here's our racetrack rules for that engine. It's not important right now because we'll go step by step and show you how to convert this box stock Harbor Freight motor into a go-karting engine. These are some of the tools we're going to need. I have needle nose, metric sockets, an impact, but you can use a regular socket and ratchet, 10 millimeter wrench, 10 millimeter socket is mostly what's used. Okay, let's get to it. These motors cost about $110, $120. If you get a coupon, sometimes you can get them for $99 at Harbor Freight. Here's the manual that comes with the engine. We'll only be using that to know how much oil the engine holds. This is how the engine works. It has a few tips on the choke and the shutoff, but mostly we won't be using the stock muffler or stock gas tank. This is just telling you where the oil goes. It's right here or on the other side. Okay, we'll get started by taking the air cleaner off first. It's one clamp there, and it's got a hose right here and a valve cover, and then these two bolts. And there's the air cleaner. We're not going to use this air cleaner. It's very restrictive. And we're not going to use that gasket. Next thing is we'll take off the stock exhaust. Once you break the nuts free, they spin right off. That's the stock exhaust. We're gonna use the stock gasket, so we don't want to wreck that. If you take your knife blade and just go around it, it should pop off. Now we're going to move on to the gas tank and the governor. The gas tank has two bolts right there, 10 millimeter. And it has one bolt right here. Okay, we got our 8 millimeter wrench. Okay, we got another hose under here with a clamp. That went on there. Now our gas tank is off. We won't be using the stock gas tank. Now we're on to the governor system. The governor will hold this motor at about 3,600 RPM, and you're allowed to run it at any RPM you desire, probably 5,000. So we're going to take the governor off. Just those two screws holding the governor and some springs, and they'll come right off. That we won't be using. The spring we won't be using. Now some people will wire the governor, but I like to take the governor out of the engine. That's our carburetor. We'll be using that. The choke has to stay intact on the carburetor. This is the low oil sensor. We don't need that in the engine. This is the on and off switch. We can keep that, or you can take it off. It has this little clip that holds all the wiring. So right here, we're going to cut off the wire for the low oil sensor. The rest of these we can unplug. This is the engine ground. You can plug that back into there. If you like, you could shorten the wire or put it back in the clip. And now the switch will still work, but the oil sensor will not. The switch is eternally grounded right here on the case. And it would be equivalent to if this engine was running and you went like that. Then the engine wouldn't run. So a lot of people don't run the switch. They just pull the spark plug lead on and off to turn the engine on and off. But I like the switch. Okay, this is the governor that we're going to take off next. Sometimes you gotta spread this a little bit, like that, then it pops right off. Once you take this clip off, that's gonna drop into the engine. Okay, so we're going to take the governor out of the engine, but the governor, since it's so long, when it drops in, it gets hit on the crankshaft. So we're going to cut this right above the clip. The clip is holding it up, and then we're going to cut it off with our die grinder. We plugged our exhaust port, and we plugged our intake with a rag just so we don't get any metal shavings in there. And then we're just going to use a die grinder with a cutoff wheel. Okay, now that's going to be really hot, so I don't advise on grabbing it with your finger. And then we'll let that cool while we work on taking the crankcase cover off. We don't want to wreck the gasket. We don't want to lose the dowel pins. There's one here and one here that come out, and we can put it back in the case. This is the camshaft. This will slide right out of there, so we don't want to tip it so that it falls out, because then the lifters will fall out and then we'll have to put that all back together. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to get the governor out. So now I'm going to take, there's a little washer up there if you see. So I'm going to take the clip off. There's the governor arm, but you don't want to leave the washer up there. So you want to reach in and get the washer out. That will not be good if that falls in the engine. In there is the governor drive gear, and once you take the arm out, it's holding this little plastic piece, so we want to get this plastic piece out of there, and the washer goes out of there. Now the governor is just held in by a spring clip. It can't go nowhere, it's just floating in there and it's disconnected. Now with the governor removed, we're going to tap this hole with a 1/4 20 tap and put a bolt in it to plug that hole. You also could use this hole for your carburetor to suck vacuum from the engine. You could tap it with a pipe plug and put the nipple on there for that. We're going to show you how to do that. Now we're going to tap this hole, and then we're going to drill a hole for the pipe fitting for the fuel pump. I bought two different style fittings depending on which one you like and how you want to route the hose. This is just a 1/4 inch bolt that we're going to tap the hole and then use some sealer and put it in. This is a number Q drill bit for the pipe thread, and we're going to put that in there. This is the thickest part of the block, so that'll work nice there. Okay, so now we're going to take our 1/4 20 pipe tap. We don't want any shavings in the motor, so I'm going to put this rag in there. Just like that, and there's our hole. You can kind of see where it's going to drop. That's where it's going to go in the motor, so I kind of made a U shape with my rag to catch the shavings. Since this hole is already close to the size of the tap, that's all we have to do is run the tap into the hole. It cuts in there pretty good. And I run it pretty far down. You can see a lot of the metal shavings just stay on the tap. Now we really don't want the shavings in the motor, so we want to make sure that we have it all wiped out the best we can. And then I'm going to spray a little brake clean in there. And double check it and do it one more time because I see a little piece back there I want out. Okay, it looks pretty clean now. You can shine a flashlight in there, you'll see it, the little specks of it, but if you're real careful, that prevents us from taking the whole engine apart, which you could do that too, but you know, this is going to save you some time. Okay, now we're going to put a little sealer on our bolt, like that. Okay, that part's done. Now the next part is we have to drill a hole here and tap it. And so we're going to do the same thing and put our cloth in there to catch any of the shavings. I like to start with a smaller drill because this Q is going to be quite large. It's easier to drill a pilot hole and then go from there for the tap. You also could have a vacuum cleaner handy, and we could suck up all those shavings. Okay, so we got our vacuum, and we're going to try and control our shavings. Then we're going to switch to the next biggest drill bit, which is our Q drill bit. That's what it says on the package for the tap. I'm going to turn the vacuum on this time. Okay, now we have our hole, and this is going to be our tap to put into the hole. For an 1/8 inch pipe thread, we're going to use this tap, which I found a 3/8 socket fits over the end, which gets us up high enough. You just got to put a little pressure on it. You can use some cutting oil if you want. And I don't ever go all the way to the bottom. And there's some of our shavings. I'm going to get the vacuum. Okay, so you could put a little sealer on there. And you can just snug it up with a 7/16 wrench. You don't have to go crazy, just until it gets tight. Okay, now that we got our fittings in and our hole plugged, we can put the side cover back on. You don't need any gasket sealer. It has a built-up lip here, so that will seal it back on there. You gotta wiggle it a little bit to get it to pop shut. And then I like to do a crisscross pattern. And then I like to keep going around. And it's got to be snugged up. I think it's 108 inch-pounds if you want to use a torque wrench. That's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. But this isn't that critical that you can't feel when it's tight. I'm using a short ratchet so that I'm not over tightening it. Okay, and there you have it. That's the end of what we're going to do today, because we have parts on order to put the pipe on it, to put the air cleaner adapter on it, and then our throttle plate will go on it, and this hose will go to our fuel pump, and in the next session we will show you how to do that. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing to our channel.